Hi, I'm James, and today we're looking at Uncle Ivan's Weapons Emporium, machine guns from Ivan for Twilight 2000 by Ageless Games. Now this is available on Drive-Thru RPG for $3.99, 16-page booklet, and it covers a grand total, get the figures right, of 15 weapons for Twilight 2000 and some extra rules. So with the exception of the the cover art, a lot of the artwork is recycled. That's from Twilight 2000. That makes sense, I've got no problem with that. We've got a table of contents, quick definition of what machine guns are, a little bit about Uncle Ivan, who is the character that's referred to in this. It's an in-game document, so we've got that. There's also at the end, what I thought was a bit of a wasted opportunity, some coupons that you can use, that's supposed to be used in-game. Yeah. So let's look at the weapons and see what we've got. So we've got the M134 minigun, very useful addition to the rules. Can't see any issues with that. The M1919 Browning. Okay. Not the one that instantly jumps to mind, but could easily have been floating around. Britain was using them on things like ferrets till at least the 1980s, so they could easily be floating around. Yeah, no problem with those. These are all ones converted to 7.62 NATO. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Weight of 7 on it. Only comment I'd make with that is I'd probably have split that into the tripod and the weapon. We've then got the Stoner 63. Now, I've loved the Stoner. I was very lucky to get my hands on one at Shrivenham a few years ago. But it wasn't a very common weapon. It was used post-Vietnam by the SEALs to around the mid-1980s. So it's been in storage 10 years at this point. It's got a reliability factor of 5. Now, I think there's an issue there. The original versions had a problem where they could fire up initially at 650 RPM, but as the weapon heated up, that would increase, and it went up to about 1,100. We've got a rate of fire of 4, so it's sort of representing the lower end. But the M27 Link, which is what's used on the Mini-Me, theoretically is compatible, but gave vast problems with reliability, so I would really hammer that one down. It's also worth noting it would be using the original 5.56 rather than the SS109 round if you wanted to be really pedantic. We've got the Bren. Now I can't understand why the Bren has got a range of 6, whereas virtually every other weapon's got the range of 8 for 7.62. The Bren was notorious for its accuracy, and I can personally attest to that, having used it myself. I'd also point out the picture is the 303 version. Little touches, but someone like a geek like me who actually has used them would comment on. You've got the Lewis gun. Now that's a very, very odd choice. I can't quite see why that one's in there. Particularly when you look at the calibre, it's 7.62 by 54 Russian. There were a few of them made. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think it's unlikely they would still be in Russian arsenals today. Anything's possible with some of the stuff we've seen pulled out in the Ukraine, I will give you that, but it seems an odd one. And one point I pick up which nobody ever notices with this is if you use the 97 round drum magazine, which let's be honest players are going to go for, you can't actually use the sights. It's the double height goes over the top of the normal magazine and actually blocks the sight, so that's something you need to be aware of. Another weapon I had a big query with was the Vickers. Now the Vickers is in the 3006 version, which there were only, looking at my notes, 9,200 made, and probably about 2,000 of them were lost during the First World War. If you were going to include it, I would probably include it in the 7.62 by 54 Russian, because there were a few made in that, and you could even use the same stats then for the Maxim, because the Maxim and the Vickers are basically the same weapon. The range of 6 I find odd. Again, it's a weapon well known for accuracy, and was accurate enough to actually even be used for indirect fire. And the reliability, 3. I'm assuming that means an incredibly worn out gun. The Vickers actually has a reputation for reliability beyond almost every other weapon. There's a case that Hogg quotes where 10 of them fired over 1 million rounds without a serious stoppage in the First World War. So yeah. Moving on, we've then got 3, I was going to say Russian, but I'll settle for Warsaw Pact guns. You got the IP2, which I hadn't come across in that name. I'd come across it briefly as the PU-21, intended as a 5.45 replacement, but it was never manufactured. It was designed in the mid-70s, and I can't see why it would turn up in the game. So yeah, that was a bit of a waste for me. There's a Zastava M84, which is basically the Yugoslavian version of the PKM. To be honest, it's close enough to just use the same stats. So again, I probably wouldn't have bothered with that. But it's also listed as a heavy machine gun. It should be a general purpose machine gun, surely. And then we've got the RPD. Yeah, no worries with that. One thing I would point out though, a lot of people don't realise with this, I'm just going to say, it does say that the belt is stored inside the drum container. What people don't realise is the belt is non-disintegrating. A lot of people forget that. So you're going to have the cloth belt hanging out of your weapon afterwards. Moving on to the next page then, we've got 2 pages of NATO weapons. We've got the Setme Ameli, which is an odd weapon because it's really only used by Spain. So not something I can see turning up. Be very odd to include that one. You've then got the FN Mag and the Minimi. I can't quite understand why they've been done because they're already in the main rules, okay, under slightly different names. And I'd also query the Minimi's range of 8. I would say it shouldn't be more than 6. It's a 5.56 weapon. So yeah. You then got the MG4, which was a development of the MG3, but in 5.56. Given that the prototype wasn't revealed until September 2001 and it wasn't adopted until 2005, it's not, I would have thought, the most likely weapon to turn up in the campaign. There's a big debate as to what would happen with Germany if the Cold War had restarted, as it has in the background. So yeah, you could justify it on those grounds. It's entirely up to you. I mean, the other option is there was an LMG development of the G11. Presumably that would have been called the MG11, which was never developed. So you've got options. The MG42, yeah, don't have a problem with that. Although, why the damage and the critical are the equivalent of a 5.56 round, not the equivalent of a 7.62 round. The round's 7.92. But, so I would have thought that should be higher. You've then got the last of the new weapons, which is the SIG MG 710-3, which is the 7.62 NATO version of the 710. Again, I can't really understand why that's in there. It was used by Switzerland, Bolivia, Brunei, Chile and Liberia. None of these are ones that I'm likely, I think, to see in the campaign. So I have to be honest, I was very disappointed in that part of it. Then you come on to new rules. Now the new rules look at something that really has become common in real life, less so in the time period of the game, but there were signs emerging, which is the modularity of weapons. That's something I think is quite big. So we've got a couple of new rules for sniper rifles, concealed firearms and attachments. None of that is an issue. The attachments are a bit odd, some of them. We've got suppressors and silencers. Okay, we've then got flash suppressors listed separately, but they don't combine. If you have a silencer or a suppressor, that should also affect the flash. So that's something I would look at there. Shotgun chokes, the rules as written give you no incentive whatsoever to do that. They're actually on about reducing the damage, but the rules talk about the shot being more concentrated, so I think that perhaps there might be a misprint or something in there. Rules for adding bayonets, yeah, although I would add certain submachine guns can actually fit bayonets as well. Rules for scopes, both civilian and military. I'm not convinced that military scopes are actually better than civilian for the range bonuses. If anything, I would argue the other way round. So that's something I would look at there. I wouldn't give a full 2 bonus for military scopes. I'd give both 1, but probably make the military one a lot more rugged. And depending on the scope, if it's a fairly low powered scope, such as the SUSAT or the ACOG, possibly give a bonus without aiming. That might be something to consider. Night vision and thermal are just taken straight from the book. We've got rangefinders. This is sort of the golf rangefinder type thing, fitting that to the weapon to know a distance. Okay, I could see it possibly being done. I've never come across a case of that, but it could happen. Bipods, okay, yeah, that makes sense. What you need to consider with anything like this is, did the rules actually allow for these initially, or is this something that you'd be giving a bonus to the weapons? You know, like the machine guns, you'd be hard pressed to find a machine gun without a bipod or a tripod. So should that bonus be in automatically? You know, you'd have to consider this for your campaign. Red dot scopes, okay, yep. Flashlights, yep, makes sense. Ammunition saddles for putting a few rounds on, yeah, that makes sense. Folding stocks. Now, folding stocks, you can add them to pistols and things. That makes sense. I think something needs to be considered about having a folding stock on a weapon. My personal preference is actually not to have folding stocks when I'm firing, but that's a personal preference. I find the cheek weld isn't as good. But you could introduce a rule that, I mean, the rule for this is +1 modifier if the stock is fully extended. The simple answer is obviously then, if you've got a weapon with the stock is folded, then perhaps not allow aimed fire, and then you've then got it both ways. For rifles, you know, it's a swings and roundabouts. You've got to decide where submachine guns go. That's something I'd have to look at. Rules for magazines. So you've got rules for extended magazines and dual magazines. The extended mags, a point that's often overlooked is an extended mag reduces reliability generally. That is something you would have to consider. Dual mag clamps, the good old jungle mags. I think most characters probably wouldn't bother spending any money. Just probably get a bit of gaffer tape, that would solve everything. Disintegrating belt link, yep, although it only mentions the American ones. You know, the Russian ones would probably need doing it. I would just generally just say per caliber, I wouldn't be messing around. Brass catchers, yep, that makes sense. Some rules for anti-barrel grenade launchers, including the 20mm one, which I'm probably never going to use in a campaign. Then we get the rules for new types of ammunition. So in the new types of ammunition, we've got flechette. Okay. Big debate about flechette. Actually, was it more effective? Considering how rare it'll be, I don't think it's going to be an issue. Subsonic ammunition. Yeah. Problem with it, there's no negative aspect to it. Using subsonic ammo, you still get all the range and the damage. There needs to be a downside for it. And if you combine it with a suppressor, that is a very effective way. Hollow points, yeah, that's straightforward. Tracer, yeah, those rules no issues with. Armor piercing ammunition, reduce the armor penetration, but generally they don't do as much damage. So I probably would also reduce the damage by 1, or probably more realistically up the critical by 1. Breaching rounds, that was a good addition, and blank rounds. And then we've got the credits page. So what do I think to it? There's some nice things in there, and I think for most players not really an issue. As a skill at arms instructor and range conducting officer, there were things in there that just made me go but that is somebody who has, for example, the full Jane's Infantry Weapons System book to refer to. I've been writing statistics for Twilight 2000 weapons since the game pretty much came out. So you're talking, let's not go into how long. What does that mean to me? Well, I've made a lot of mistakes as well with things. There's a lot of nice ideas in there. Some very odd choices for weapons. Yeah, players will like odd weapons. There's ones in there that I would like, which I wouldn't have put in if I was being completely realistic. But I think you have to include the Stoner, for example. That's just one of those lovely weapons. Interesting little book. Some nice bits I can take away from it. But to me it felt like it needed one more rewrite. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please click on the like button below so that I know what people like and I know what to make more of. Alternatively, if you've enjoyed it and think you'd like to see more, please click on the subscribe button. That way you get notified by YouTube whenever I bring out a new video. And you never know, there might be something in there that you hadn't considered, because I do cover a variety of things on the channel. And finally, if you have a little bit of cash going, I now have a Patreon account. I'm always looking for patrons, because at the end of the day, let's be perfectly honest, it's a good way for me to get a little bit of money that I'll use to buy review items or to travel to museums and so on. I don't put a huge amount on that. At the minute, all we've got is one tier charging £1 a month, which just, as I said, helps cover my costs. See you soon.